Good morning. Welcome aboard November 147 Bravo Romeo. Today we're going to be talking about auto calibration, the on-speed angle of attack system. And we're going to use a phone or tablet to interface with the system for calibration. So the very first thing you're going to want to do is get that phone or tablet ready. Make sure you're in the airplane mode, you have your Wi-Fi turned on and your Bluetooth turned off. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and open your browser and you can find the ONSPEED network, and you can go ahead and log on to that network. The password is angle of attack, all one word, lowercase. Once you've done that, if you have an Apple device, you can type ONSPEED local in the address line. That'll bring up the Wi-Fi gateway homepage. Before we calibrate the system, one of the things we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make sure that we have our flap curve set up correctly and that our flap position sensor is reading correctly. So we're going to go into settings, system configuration. We're going to pull up the system configuration menu. Now, if you follow the checklist down the ground, you've already got one flap curve set up in the system for all of your normal flap settings, and we have 3 flap settings today in the RV4, so that means we need to have 3 curves pre-programmed. The very first thing we want to do, though, is we want to check our flap position sensor under air loads, even though we did measure it on the ground, because if there's any slop or hysteresis in the system, we're going to catch it right now because we're going to actually read the sensor under air loads. So all we need to do right now is be in a flap 0 configuration, which we are. We're going to just select read, and then we're going to check that sensor value. You can see that it changed just slightly. It changed from 213 to 210 in mine. That's a random number. It's a potentiometer. It's totally normal for that number to change every time you read that sensor. Now that we've read the flap curve 1 sensor, let's go ahead and get flaps 20 set. So I'm just going to slow the airplane down here. And we'll get below VFE. We'll deploy flaps 20, and we're just going to repeat that drill one more time. All right, flaps 20 are deployed. We'll just trim the airplane up here. Add just a little bit of power to stabilize. And go down to flap curve 2 and simply repeat that. So I just hit the read button. And the value changed just slightly. That's something I expect. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to read our flap position sensor in flaps 40. So I'm just slowing the airplane down again. And flaps 40 are deployed. We'll add just a little bit of power. Trim, stabilize in a flaps 40 configuration, and we'll hit the read button for flap curve 3. And the value changed just slightly. I expected that. So anytime I change anything in configuration, I need to go to the bottom of the page and hit save. If I don't get a configuration save notification, simply hit save again. It's important that we see configuration saved. Now our settings are correct. Our flap curves are correct, and we're ready to calibrate the system. Okay, now let's get set up to fly an actual calibration. So from the home page, we're going to navigate to settings, and then the AOA calibration wizard. That'll bring up the first page. Now on the first page, there's 4 data fields that we have to set. The first one's going to be your maximum allowable aircraft gross weight, 1,500 pounds for the RV4 that I'm flying today. The next data field is going to be the current weight of the aircraft, so you'll have to calculate that, but right now my airplane weighs 1,310 pounds based on me, the items I have in the cockpit, and the fuel that I have on board. The next item we're going to insert is going to be the best glide speed at aircraft gross weight in knots indicated airspeed, and Lenny means maximum gross weight, so that's going to be 80 knots for the airplane that we're flying today, and then the airframe load factor limit is 6 Gs. We'll put that in, and then we'll select the continue button down at the bottom of the page. That'll bring up the second page of the wizard. Now, the very first instruction here, and that's all this page is instruction says get ready to fly a 1 knot per second deceleration. Now, I want to emphasize that exact deceleration rate is not critical. Do not let the deceleration gauge either on the optional M5 or your phone turn into eye candy. It is not critical that you maintain that specific deceleration rate. Once you've reviewed the instructions, then we'll go ahead and we'll hit continue. That'll bring up the actual calibration page itself. You can see that we have a deceleration display on here if you don't have the optional M5. And I want to point out there's a smoothing bar over here, and I recommend a fairly smooth setting. You can see that my setting is about 4/5 of the way towards smooth on the left where I have the little slider bar adjusted. The other thing I always check on here before a run is that the flap position is reading correctly, and right now we're in a flaps 0 configuration, and it does indeed say flaps 0. All right, now let's take a look at doing an IMU calibration. So we're going to need to change our data source from EFIS to IMU. So I'm going to go in here to System Configuration. We're going to scroll down below our flap curves, and we're going to find our calibration data source, and I'm going to change that from EFIS to the internal IMU on the ONSPEED. Now, because I made a change in configuration, I need to go to the bottom and I need to hit save. If I do not get the configuration save, I just continue to hit the button until I do. Now, the next important thing to remember with an IMU is we've got to have a good IMU, so I'm going to actually pull up the attitude display right now on my optional M5, or if I don't have the optional M5, I'm going to go to Live View AHRS display, and I'm going to make sure that the IMU is reading correctly and it matches what I see on my ADI and outside the window. Now let's take a look at a flaps 0 calibration run. So all we're going to do for that is accelerate on out to maximum level flight speed, or the top of the green arc, whichever one you hit first. As we approach 180 miles an hour indicated airspeed in the RV4, all we're going to do is hit the record button, pull the throttle back, allow the airplane to start to decelerate. Now is trim for V&O condition, and as I slow down, I just start gradually increasing back pressure. At these higher speeds, I don't need much back pressure at all, but as the airplane slows down, the rate at which I apply back pressure is going to have to increase. Now, it's okay to use some trim in here if you want, but you don't want to use full nose up trim. So as the nose starts to approach the horizon, and we get to kind of like a normal approach speed, I suggest you stop trimming at that point. All I'm doing is looking outside the window. I'm not really concerned with my altimeter, not really concerned with my deceleration display. Aero has kind of naturally dropped into the green band right now. I'm pretty much at a level altitude, and it's taking me a good 60 to 90 seconds to get to the stall. Now, as I get closer to the stall, that back pressure rate has to increase. Notice I'm in a fairly level attitude, about 12 and a half, 15 degrees nose high. We get to the stall, the system senses a stall. We can come down here, we can check our curve out. We got a nice concave curve, and we got a nice R-square value of 0.9907. I'll just take a quick screenshot. That's for test purposes. I want to always save the data to the file, because if I need tech support, I've got it. And if I want to save the calibration and actually use it, I would hit the Save Calibration button. All I want to do now is just demonstrate how tolerant the system is. Our recommended technique for calibration is a level, smooth deceleration into the stall. But what I want to show you is that your specific deceleration rate or your specific altitude control is not critical, nor is the altitude at which you calibrate the system. So I've accelerated on out to 180 indicated, which is a V&O condition. All I'm going to do is press the record button, pull the power back, and just start gradually pulling my nose up. Now again, what we're always looking for in any calibration is just a smooth increase in pitch. But we're starting a climb, our deceleration rate is very slow, we're already up to 7.5 degrees nose high. None of the parameters are critical for this other than just the smooth pull into the stall. Now we're up over 10 degrees nose high. We're already up 250 feet. Deceleration rate is well in excess of 2 knots per second. 15 degrees nose high, 350 feet high, 20 degrees nose high, 400 feet high. There's our stall. And look down at our curve, and we can see we captured a good curve. Okay, we got a value of 0.9853, nice and concave. And again, we always want to save the data to the file in case we need any sort of tech support. And if we wanted to use that calibration, we would hit the Save Calibration